Test, 1, 2, 3. students and volunteers can organize, then professional companies, they will be so jealous about our skills and what we can achieve just with our free time. Yesterday was the opening day. We had a few nice things all together. We had the walking tour, we had the flag parade, and then we had an amazing opening ceremony where we heard from local politicians, from stakeholders, and we saw how they value ESN, how they value the Erasmus Plus program. But today is actually the first day that we start our sessions. Your learning experience starts today, and I hope that you are ready to embark on this journey. A journey where you will decide what you want to know, what you want to learn. Nobody will push you. It's up to you. And I want to give you like a few tips on how to have like a great experience out of this Erasmus Generation meeting. The first tip, the Erasmus Generation meeting and ESN in general is all about friendship. It's all about friends. This is the most important element in ESN. Whoever tells you, I don't know what else that is important, no, friendship is important, and this is, okay, in the next days, don't stick only with your delegation. Don't stick only with your nationalities. Go and meet people from completely different cultures. Ask them, how do they support Erasmus students? What do they do in their city, in their country? What can you do differently? And make friends with those people, because the friends that you are meeting here, you will have them forever. And who knows, in 5, 6, 7 years, maybe you can meet again in different capacities. I have been in ESN for 10 years. In the past 4 years, I'm not active anymore, but I meet my friends that I made in the local or national or international level every time, wherever I go. You have a friend in every country in Europe. And now we can have also outside of Europe friends because of ESN. Okay, friendship, number one, really, really important. Second, that is very important, is what I said before. It's that you are responsible for your own learning experience. Try to attend as many sessions as you can. The ones that you have registered, go and watch them, follow them, listen from the people what they have to say. Not from the ones that are presenting, also from the rest of you. We need you to be active, because every time that you speak, somebody, let's see, raise your hand, look around you, actually. And I always say that the Erasmus Generation meeting is the first time that as a local ESNer, we realize how big ESN is. This is the moment. See around, look your friends, look your topics. And all the topics and everything that we will discuss is about removing barriers. This is the main theme of our event, removing barriers, and inclusive participation and active participation are two important elements that we will explore. Because, not be mistaken, maybe you have been on Erasmus, okay? Maybe you have supported so many international students and Erasmus students, and you believe that the program is important, and it is important, but do you know actually the percentage of people who have been abroad? Do you know how much it is? Like the people who have a mobility experience nowadays. It's 10%. 10% of the students across Europe nowadays have a mobility experience. This is not enough. There are so many out there that they still haven't lived this amazing experience. And this is for us to change this number, to make the program more inclusive, because it's not only for the privileged ones. It's not only for those that they can afford it. It should be for everyone. It should not be a privilege. It should be a basic right. Because the moment you have a mobility experience abroad, you become a better citizen. You learn how to respect the other. You learn how to tolerate other behaviors. You know how to become a friend with someone with so many different elements. And there are so many of us, actually, that we have changed completely the way that we think because of our Erasmus experience. So let's make it better for all the people that they come in the future, okay? Because, as I said, 10% is the mobility experience, or 11, let's say. And even worse statistic is that, unfortunately, people with disabilities, they represent only 1 or even less than 1%. So let's make it more inclusive for everybody. It's not only for these people who are here in the room. And then when it comes to active participation, you heard about it yesterday. This year we have the European elections. And ESN is urging for active citizenship, active participation for so many years, not just because the European elections, but this year, due to this fact, we will also magnify our efforts because it is important. It is important to care about the decisions that others take for us. For example, if there are some decisions that they really affect us, and it's up to the young people, to the young generation to change those decisions for the better. Unfortunately, a few years ago, since a few years ago, we don't have UK in the Erasmus Plus program anymore. And this is very unfortunate. Years ago, we lost, unfortunately, Switzerland. We don't have Switzerland in the Erasmus Plus program. Like 2 years ago, as the Vice President said, the budget of the Erasmus Plus program was doubled. All these decisions, the first one's negative and the other one positive, depending on the people who are there and they are deciding for things that we care, like the Erasmus Plus program, like international mobility. So it's not that European elections is something that is far away. No, it's something that affects us and it affects CSN, and we urge you to care about the civil society, to care about the community, because this is what we preach also to the students, right? We bring them to our local community, and we don't want them just to have parties and trips. No, we want them to volunteer to our local community, to be engaged in our city, to contribute there to the people that they are in need. So those two elements are very, very important for us, and this is why we are exploring this theme this year. So now, without further ado, I will start with the first speaker, actually. This speaker has a lot of, I think he has attended more EGMs rather than the most of you here. He has been here from the beginning, like from the first edition, 2 years ago, and then last year, and then this year. So thank you so much for being such a big supporter of our cause. So now I would like to invite Luis Loureira on the stage, who is let me see my notes, from the EPSO, and he is the head of outreach and external relations. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot, Luis.
Thank you. Okay, buenos días, Sevilla. I'm really happy to be here, like you've just heard, for the third time. It feels already like I'm part of the family. I wanted to start with a song, if you don't mind, and I hope that you will be able to join me in singing at least part of this song. Okay, so here it goes. Welkom in Europa, blijf ik tot ik dood ga. Europa, pa, Europa, pa. Europa, pa, 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 pa. Europa, pa, pa. Hi! Europa, pa, 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 pa. Europa. Hi! I wanted to sing this song not because I am rooting for the Netherlands to win the Eurovision. And so before you go on social media and say that, oh, the guy representing the European Personnel Selection Office working for the European Commission was promoting the entry of the Netherlands in the Eurovision, the reason why I wanted to sing this song, it's actually because it is about Schengen and one of the fundamental principles of the European Union, which is freedom of movement for people. And so many of us are here today because of that very important principle, freedom of movement. And I wanted to take the opportunity to welcome to Schengen our Romanian and Bulgarian friends. Welcome to Schengen. This is the vision. It's a Europe without borders. It's a Europe where we can travel freely from one country to another, without barriers. After all, the topic of your event is removing barriers. And this, I think, illustrates very clearly what the European project is all about. I also wanted to mention something a little bit more personal. Some of you yesterday came to me and said, Luis, in Bucharest, we loved your orange socks. Well, I brought yellow ones today. And the reason why I brought yellow ones is obviously to celebrate the colors of the European Union flag, but also of Ukraine. I think it's very important for us not to forget that we are here sitting in this auditorium celebrating what the Union has to offer, peace. It's very important for us not to forget that. It's a project that is about building peace, but not far away from us, we have fellow Europeans that are in the battlefield. And I think that it's important for us here today to remember that, right? Now, removing barriers. Well, it won't surprise you that my job is about bringing people like yourselves, talented, multilingual, cosmopolitan, international people like yourselves, to the European Union civil service. And what have we been doing to make sure that access to the European Union civil service is easier, is bigger? Well, we have changed the way that exams are done. Yes, you've heard me right. We have exams. In order for you to become an official, like myself, for instance, in the European Union civil service, you have to pass tests. But in the past, these used to be both written and oral. And what we've done in January of 2023 is actually quite radical, believe me, in our context. We have abolished the oral tests. So now they're only written tests. And if you are confused and trying to understand a little bit more of what it is that we do, myself and my colleague Koen Hendricks, who's sitting there in the front row, we will be on Saturday doing a workshop from 4:30 until 6 o'clock, where we will be able to explain to you all of the intricacies of the different tests that we do in order for people to join the EU civil service. We've also done something that is, I believe, quite important to make access to careers in the European Union easier. We have now implemented a full 24-language regime. What that means in practice is that you will be able to do the tests in whatever combination of languages you wish to among the 24 official languages of the European Union. This was not always the case, but since the beginning of this year, we have also introduced this important change. You have to master at least 2 of those 24 languages in order to become an official, but now the way that the tests are run allows you to choose whatever combination you want in order to pass them. The other thing that I believe is very important as well for you to know is that we have continued to make huge efforts to accommodate specific needs from our candidates. And I'm talking in particular about people with disabilities. I think that we have one of the most transparent and comprehensive policies when it comes to selection, when it comes to the tests in relation to disability. And we do make the effort to adapt to the individual case whenever we have people with specific needs joining our selection procedures. I think it's also very important for you to know that we have very comprehensive policies when it comes to candidates who are pregnant or breastfeeding. We really want to be as inclusive as possible and remove as many barriers as we can for people to be able to participate in our selection procedures. And finally, we have also committed to organizing all of our tests online so that wherever you are, you can participate in those selection procedures. We are trying to make sure that those online tests are catering to the needs that people have to make them more accessible as we go along. They are not always as perfect as we would like them to be, but we are working very hard to make sure that online testing works well. I believe that it's also important, and this will be sort of the wrap-up of my speech, and if somebody has a question, a comment, I would love to hear it as well. I don't want to be up here on stage speaking for 20 minutes without giving you a chance to challenge me or to add something to what I've just said. I think it's also very important, as I was saying, for you to know that we are really pushing forward a policy of attraction of diverse talent to join the European Union institutions. I don't know if you are familiar with the work of Shada Islam. She's very well known in the Brussels bubble. She's a journalist that specializes on EU matters. And a few years ago, she created a hashtag called Brussels So White. And it's true. Our civil service is too white, and we want to change that. We have, first of all, started by acknowledging that we are too white. And now we have started to work to make sure that we become a little bit browner. I think it's important for you to know that in a 27 member state context, the issue of diversity can be not only controversial, but also challenging, because of course the way 27 member states understand diversity is very different because of their history, because of their culture, politics. But one thing is certain, the 27 member states that we work for are extremely committed to diversity, and they want the EU civil service to look like the societies that we are supposed to serve. So I think it's important that you know that recently, for instance, and I've been around for 22 years in the EU civil service, we have seen an organization grow up from within called Diversité Europe. I mean, I won't translate it even though I've said it in French. I'm sure you understood it, which is composed of staff in the institutions who identify as belonging to a minority in terms of ethnicity and or race. And this is really a new phenomenon in our context, and I believe that it illustrates a new time in the EU civil service where indeed the hashtag Brussels So White may become the hashtag Brussels is white, brown, yellow, green and blue and whatever other colors of the rainbow you may think of. It is something that we have been working on by connecting to organizations at European level who represent ethnic and racial minorities, because we want to understand what are the obstacles that make these individuals not apply as much as we would like them to EU careers, and make sure, again, that we can remove as many barriers as possible for people to apply. And finally, I wanted to ask you a favor. Please be our multipliers. Please tell people around you, even if this does not concern you, that the European Parliament, for instance, has had for the past 10 years, since 2014, a positive action program for contract agents with a disability. Please tell your contacts, if this does not apply to you, that the Council of the European Union, the European Parliament, and the European Ombudsman have positive action programs for trainees with a disability. Many times colleagues of mine who work in this field come to me and say, we don't get enough applicants. We must change that. People must know that these opportunities exist, and we want them to apply. So again, if it does not apply to you, it may apply to someone sitting next to you. So make sure that you are also the multipliers of this information and tell people around you that this exists. Would anybody have a question, a comment, very quickly? Otherwise, I have a piece of advice for you that I'd like to share before I leave the stage. Yes, please. Right, so your colleague asked what kind of numbers we are trying to achieve in terms of diversity and what is the current status, right? Is that what you've asked? Well, we don't have numbers, we don't even have quotas when it comes to nationality, and as you can imagine, one of the top priorities of ours in terms of diversity is geographic diversity. We want to make sure that we have staff from all 27 member states well represented. And yesterday at the flag parade, I was getting in touch with some of your delegations to take photos of those that came from member states that are not well represented in the EU civil service. We don't have quotas, so we have an obligation, actually a formal obligation, to make sure that the EU civil monitoring tool, whereby people on a voluntary basis will be able to share this type of information with us, including ethnicity, diversity, but also religion, also sexual orientation, gender expression, and so forth, in order for us to be able to see whether, in terms of numbers, whether we are achieving our goal of making sure that our talent pool is as diverse as we would like it to be. We know that currently that is not the case. We have done studies that show that our talent pool tends to be quite homogeneous, and we would like to make that change for the better, to become more diverse. And I hope that this monitoring tool, even though based on the voluntary decision to share that information, will allow us to track the evolution of the work that we are doing in terms of outreach. So thank you for that question. It's a very important one. A piece of advice just at the end, because I've just remembered how many people come to me asking me for advice. Should I study foreign languages? What kind of foreign languages should I study? The answer to the first question is yes, absolutely. The second question, well, it's a little bit more complicated for me to say what languages you should study. I believe that any language is always a good asset for you to have. But again, I'm not going to hide that English is the dominant language in the EU civil service. So your ability to master English is something that obviously will be assessed if you go to a recruitment interview. And I'm also asked many times whether, for instance, for a traineeship, it is essential to have a master's degree. And the answer is no, it's not essential, but it helps. But on the other hand, my mentee, I'm a trainee mentor in the Commission, coming from France, by the way, from the suburbs of Paris, does not have a master's degree. She has only a bachelor's degree. So as you can see, it's not an essential requirement for you to be selected as a trainee in the European Union institutions. But the best piece of advice that I can give you is actually based on a story that is told about a Hasidic rabbi from the 18th century. I don't know if you are familiar with his name. He's called Rebbe Zusha. And he is known for not having left any written documents, only oral stories. And Zusha, this rabbi from a town in today's Ukraine, Annapolis in Yiddish, he was at his deathbed, crying inconsolably. And his students asked him, so why is it that you're crying? You know, you are almost as wise as Moses and almost as kind as Abraham. Surely, once you get to heaven, you're going to have a positive assessment. And Zusha says, well, I'm not crying because I'm not as wise as Moses or as kind as Abraham. I'm crying because I'm afraid that once I go to heaven, I will be asked, why weren't you Zusha? So for those of you thinking about what and how to be in life, the best piece of advice that I can give you, which is, by the way, the advice I give myself, is be yourself. It is already quite demanding to be ourselves every single day of our lives. You don't have to be the best, you just have to be the best version of yourselves. That's already quite enough. And so I wanted to once again thank you for your attention, for having me here with you in Seville, being part of this wonderful opportunity. I wish you a great conference, and I'll be around together with my colleague Koen for any questions that you may have about the EU Civil Service. I hope many of you will join us as trainees, as officials, and who knows, some of you I may meet in the corridors of the European Commission not very far from today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Luis. Thank you so much, Luis. That was wonderful. I actually attended your session last year. It was very nice and very insightful. Are you doing the same session this year again? Yes? Okay, then you have to really attend Luis' session to understand if you want how can you work at the European institutions. It's really a big privilege for us to have inside information and some tips on how the process works and so on. Actually, we have also many ESNers who are currently working for the European Commission or for the European Parliament, and we have many, and maybe many among us, that they have done a traineeship at the European Commission or the Parliament or generally at the European institutions. And I can tell you that it's an amazing experience. I did my traineeship as well at the IKEA, which is the agency that manages the Erasmus Plus program. And it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So I really urge you, if you are interested in European affairs, try it. You don't have to be on the international level of ESN in order to have a competitive advantage. You can be on the local level, you can be someone who starts now, and you may be, who knows, find your place in Brussels in one of the European institutions. So thank you, Luis, for all the information that you shared with us. Now we are moving away from the institutions, and we will go actually to a speaker that is coming from the business world, because in ESN, we also have a lot of collaborations with companies, with businesses, and this specific organization is one of the long-lasting partners of ESN. We are partners for more than a decade. I don't know even how many years, because we started this collaboration before I joined ESN. This is how many? 15 years. 15 years we are partners with Pernod Ricard people, and we have amazing programs together. But big applause for Pernod Ricard, please. 15 years of responsible party, 15 years of empowering young people. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Cédric Ramat on the stage. Excuse me for my French, but it's terrible, I know. And Cédric is Executive Vice President for Human Resources at Pernod Ricard. The floor is yours, Cédric. Do you want the... No, okay. So, buenos días.
Okay, so I'll do that way, it's better. So buenos dias and good morning to all of you. I was saying that I'm super happy. It's fantastic for me to be in front of you here. We can feel the high level of energy in the room, even if I can see some suspicious sunglasses in the room. But that's not the topic of today. So what is important? I think yesterday I wanted to congrats the ESN team, because yesterday the opening ceremony was just amazing. And I've learned a lot of things, and especially one or two things. I think I should be a little bit younger than the Vice President of the European Committee, because actually I was part of the very, very first cohort of Erasmus in 1988. And I saw in the movie as well that the lady was saying, I was looking outside of my windows and I could see plane and I was dreaming. I was not dreaming at all when this came. I was studying in Aix-en-Provence, my own town, and my word was my town, and that's it. And Erasmus came, and I spent 2 weeks in Groningen University, meeting with people around the world, around the Europe, actually. And this changed my life. These 2 weeks changed my life. My horizon was totally different afterwards. And my horizons became bigger and bigger, like my dreams. And all my career, I was living and working around the world. So Erasmus made a big difference in my life. And today, I'm here to tell you two things. First, I would like to celebrate an anniversary. And as well, I would like to tell you why it's super important for you to be and to follow an Erasmus program. And it's very valuable in the private sector as well, not only with European institutions. So it's both an honor and a privilege for me to stand in front of you as Human Resources Executive Vice President of Pernod Ricard, a global leaders in the spirit industry. Our purpose, since more than a century, is créateur de convivialité, creator of conviviality, aims to unlock the magic of human connections. And as you can sense, we share a common vision with Erasmus to shape a brighter, more inclusive future that brings people together. Over the years, we've been witnesses to the extraordinary journey of countless young individuals embarking on adventures that span not only geographical borders, but also the boundaries of personal development and global understanding. The Erasmus program, a beacon of mobility and youth engagement, has played a pivotal role in facilitating these journeys. Today, we gather to discuss critical issues in mobility and youth engagement, reminding us of our collective responsibility to pave the way for future generations. 15 years. This year marks 15 years of our partnership with the Erasmus Student Network, highlighted by initiatives such as the Responsible Party and more recently, the Drink More Water campaign. These efforts epitomize what we can achieve together. This peer-to-peer approach, aimed at tackling alcohol-related harm, is more than just a campaign. It's a movement towards making informed choices, towards fostering environments where everyone feels included, and towards embracing the diversity that defines us. 15 years, it is also defying the challenges of what we constantly see today, the need for permanent change. Over all those years, we managed together to reinvent and rethink to have a greater impact, moving from underground prevention to also digital prevention. We have never stopped our journey to better raise awareness and responsible drinking and prevent harm. Our initiatives reflect broader challenges and opportunities in mobility, inclusivity, and democratic participation. By promoting responsible behaviors, we advocate for a greater sense of community and planetary responsibility, preparing ourselves to not only engage in democratic life, but actively shape it, especially as we approach the 2024 European Parliament elections. Our commitment to expanding global opportunities and ensuring access to mobility for all is about unlocking potential in partnership with you. We aim to create a world where every young person, regardless of their background, can explore, learn, and contribute to our global community. This embodies the essence of promoting inclusive international opportunities. So a frequent question I encounter, even yesterday, is how to leverage these diverse experiences in my professional journey. Actually, living and working in different countries, cultures, environment is an incredible opportunity to enrich your skills portfolio. And this is absolutely key for your future, as we believe definitely that skills are the new currency. In a company, for the talent management, by focusing on a portfolio of skills rather than job titles or specific background, we can eliminate biases and fully leverage human potential of the organization. To this end, we are launching at Pernod Ricard Horizon, an internal skills-based talent marketplace to empower our colleagues to jump in the driver's seat of their future. The idea here is to have a talent marketplace where we have the skill set of your current job, known in an organization, as usual, but we will put as well the skill set you acquired in your previous experiences, which is very important. For example, I'm in HR today, I was a sales director. I will be able to put this specific skill set in the system. And on top of that, we can add as well the personal skills. And it's where it's important for you as well, because adding this, you have the full portfolio of skills you can sell and you can leverage in an organization. I leave that my personal assistant at Ricard was known as a personal assistant for 30 years in her career. Actually, she was building as well an NGO during the weekend, and she came from scratch to 200 volunteers working every day to her NGO. So, of course, her skill set was much broader than just being an assistant at Pernod Ricard, and we never leveraged that because we didn't use that at that time. So the idea in the system now is to have the full skills of people to be able to move within the organization. This is important for you because at ESN, all your experiences, what you are living everywhere, it's absolutely key because you are building blocks step by step on who are you. And even if you have exactly the same education, for example, you don't have the same skills portfolio. And it's absolutely key for you to continue to develop that. And Erasmus is a great opportunity to make the difference on that front. So I hope it's clear that along your education, being part of Erasmus enriches your skill set, making you valuable for companies, and enabling you to monetize these experiences with companies that value skills, which I think is a great company to target. So you are in the driver's seat. You are empowered to drive your life. And as we move forward, let us remember that the strength of empowerment to make good choices, empowerment to lead by example, empowerment to inspire others. This empowerment is crucial as we encourage youth involvement in shaping the future of Europe. I'm naturally thinking about the future elections, of course. I encourage you to dream big, leverage the Erasmus network and initiatives like Responsible Party to promote a culture of responsibility, inclusivity, and active participation. Together, we can build a future that is not just envisioned, but actively constructed by youth. In closing, I extend my deepest gratitude to the Erasmus Student Network for our remarkable partnership and to all of you for your dedication to making a difference. So let's continue to uphold the torch of responsibility, both in our actions, in our heart, as we stride together towards a brighter and more inclusive future. So I won't leave this stage without saying that in this troubled time, more than ever, let us never forget the European motto, united in diversity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cedric. That was wonderful. It's amazing. It's 15 years of partnership with Pernod Ricard. We had amazing programs together, Responsible Party, the most famous one, and now we have adapted it with a new campaign. And I'm happy actually to see this campaign booming. It was something that we started during COVID, if you remember, Geraldine. People then in COVID, unfortunately, they couldn't go abroad, so we wanted to adjust this program, and we wanted to be agile and find something that can work also in the new reality that we are living in. So I'm super happy to see the campaign Drink More Water going on, and I'm hopeful that we will see much more engagement in the future. Now, We are moving to the next part of this morning session. Now we will go to a very engaging panel where we will have panelists speaking about how we can engage ourselves and the community around us during the European elections. So please, I want to invite all the panelists now to come on the stage and take a seat. We will start with Wim Gabriels, our very own Wim, Director of ESN. You can come on the stage, Wim. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have Raresh Voiku from the European Youth Forum, Judith Lantai from the Young European Federalists. We have Joana Freitas from Salto Participation, and then Maria Andres Marin from the Spanish EPLO. Thank you all, guys. Thank you so much for coming here today. We are really looking forward to hear what you have to say and how we can be more engaged in the whole process. Please take a seat.
See if this works. Hello, everybody. Does it work? You can hear us all great and well, so we don't have to go too close to the microphone while we're trying to speak. That's amazing. Thank you very much, Kostis, for the introductions. And we're also very excited to be here today. What we are going to try today in the panel is also, we've been discussing a lot of the different things related to participation, related to democratic life, and this is the theme of the event, but I think it is also really important to have a more in-depth discussion on how this impacts young people's lives and programs such as Erasmus Plus that are being organized and impact young people on the ground. So we will, ESN has always advocated for active participation and volunteering for young people before, during, and after their exchange. And by bringing young people together, our aim is to increase their intercultural competences. However, our research at the ESN survey still shows that many young people, while on exchange, very often still make more international friends, which we're not against for all, just to make sure that you are aware, we're not against that, but that we still sometimes struggle reaching out to young people that are local. Ooh. Give me 1 second. Yes. We will hear from our speakers how they work to work their impacts for young people to participate actively in society. So we will have 4 panelists here today, each coming from a different background. We are joined here by Raresh from the European Youth Forum, by Maria from the European Parliament Liaison Office for Spain, by Joana from the Salto Center for Participation and Engagement? Information, very sorry. And Judith, the Secretary General of the Young European Federalists. Raresh, as a board member of the European Youth Forum, a platform of over 100 youth organizations with international youth organizations such as ESN, but also national youth councils, you work with young activists every day. How do young people experience spaces for young activists, for youth activism these days?
Good morning, everyone. I would like to say that you are all very, very beautiful this morning. I was at the EGM in Bucharest as well. I'm Romanian, so I was in Bucharest as well. But I never got to see you from this point of view, so I just want to say that that's fantastic. And in the past decades, we've really seen an increase in the avenues that we have as young people to become engaged, to become activists, to become active politically and in different organizations. But the thing is, and I hope you're with me in this, that we need to defeat the narrative that young people are only now getting politically engaged. We, as young people, have always been politically engaged, whether it's been, by joining different political parties or by taking part in elections, by voting, by being observers in different elections and polling stations. So political participation for young people has always been there. It's not something new. But what has changed, especially because we're on social media so much these days, is the appearance and emergence of informal spaces for activism. So we see, especially lately with what's going on in the world, in the Middle East, we see boycotts, we see boycotts. So these hybrid ways of becoming engaged as a young person, which don't have to mean that you need to attend policy meetings or to create a campaign, but this very simple act which shows that as young people we are engaged, we are politically involved, and most importantly, that we give a so apart from those type of hybrid engagement, we also see, of course, that you're here today. We volunteer through Erasmus Plus. We go on exchanges. We do European Solidarity Corps volunteering stages. So all these types of programs and engagements that we are involved in show, again, not only that we are active, but that we care. And there was this report recently that I read, which said that young Europeans are more likely to join a tree planting campaign than to go out and vote. It sounds a bit strange, but when you look behind it, the reason is that as young people, we want to see immediate change. We want to see change fast because we're used to living our lives in a very fast-paced way. So this shows fundamentally how engagement has changed and political engagement has changed over the years for us as young people. So we want to have our voices heard now. We want to have our voices heard in a meaningful way. And in this way, youth organizations, ESN, national youth councils, and all other types of youth organizations, they play an essential role. Because as a young person, when you first want to get engaged politically or to become a young activist, it's very, very tough to navigate this whole web of, okay, but where do I start? Do I just go and talk to my mayor? Or do I reach out to a member of parliament? So youth organizations and organized young people, what they do is that they provide support for us, all young people, to become engaged, to make our voices heard, and they provide spaces for us to participate in a meaningful way, just the way you're doing today. The very last point, just to give a specific answer from what we've been doing at the European Youth Forum for this, we've set up a project, it's called the Activist Network, and we have had national events in quite a few states, maybe you've taken part in one of those events, where we basically empowered and trained young people not only to understand what activism is and how it works, but to actually give them the tools, literally, they need to be able to become involved and to make their voices heard. So if you go on our website, if you're interested in this, youthforum.org, we have a workbook, so it's literally a toolkit you can use to train yourself. It's super, super friendly, I have to say so myself, maybe I'm a bit biased. But if you're looking to take your first step in becoming more politically engaged, this can be an amazing first step to take.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, for also reminding us that youth activism has been around for a long time, and it creates different shapes or forms, but it will always be around. Judith, as Secretary General of the Young European Federalists, your organization is one of those international youth organizations, but that works specifically to advocate for a more united Europe. Why do you believe it is so essential for the future of Europe to be a united one? What is the role of young people in this regard?
Sure, my mic is it on? You can hear me? Thanks for the likes, great. And also just to say is that, like, yes, my current organization is the Young European Federalists, so I'm the Secretary General, but I used to be an ESNer. So it's really great to sit here with all of you and to see you and to see an EGM come to life, because I've been to AGMs before, but not an EGM. So I'm happy to be a part of this way. But yeah, to answer your question, Wim, it's whenever someone asks me this question, honestly, I ask, what's the alternative? If not a united Europe, then what do we go towards? And I think this is also something where we need to kind of debunk some narratives, also connecting a bit to what Rajesh also said, is that the status quo for the past 75 years has been a united Europe. So since, I know, vicious cycles of violent conflict, there has been a decision made that Europe needs to integrate more and needs to cooperate more. So in some sense, the norm has been, for almost a decade, almost 100 years, or let's just say the 75 then, a more united Europe. So I think this is also something that we just need to continue on as a trend. And I think it's becoming even more important now, because I'm sure also as all of you look around with the values that I know ESN also has, probably you see a very varying trend of democratic decline, of erosion of human rights, of, well, also war being on the rise again, and violent conflict both in Europe and globally, with the interaction of Europe in those wars as well. So if I look at this picture, again, I ask, what else can we do than have a united solution together? And of course, what this also means, especially also from a federalist perspective, but I would doubt that anyone in ESN sees it other way, that all accession countries to the European Union should be in the EU yesterday, basically. And I think that is also a very important element when we talk about a united Europe and why that's important, because of course, if we're all part of a political family, if we're all part of the same structures, also officially, legally speaking, that does help with keeping up with the notion of peace and the notion of prosperity that basically Europe was built for and built around. So I think it's probably I'm speaking to the choir to also say, because I know that the Erasmus generation is the one that lived all of this directly. So quite frankly, all of us, including also myself, were born into some of the privileges that Europe offers, especially those in the European Union, of course. Those outside of it, perhaps a bit less and facing more barriers than others. But I think we had the privilege to live in a period of a relative peace to some extent, and now we're going towards something else. So I think young people in this, especially this generation, have a massive role to play because we can showcase what it's like to live that as the norm. And how do we lead, basically, Europe towards that? And to pick up on this, Radesh mentioned a few ways of participation. I also would say, of course, still go out to vote, so make sure that you do that. But also, at the same time, that you run yourselves for a political office, for example. Because I think some of these visions that you have and you have lived experience with as the Erasmus generation is super crucial to have in the decision-making table, also as elected officials, because that's how you also change structures and that's how you make things happen. And just a short last closing on that, because we talk about what is a united Europe, right? And how do we do that? And I just want to clarify here things as well, that a united Europe doesn't have to mean a uniform Europe. In fact, a Europe is a strong Europe when it's diverse. So at the end of the day, this is what we're working for. This is what also my movement, federalism, is working for. There's often misunderstandings that federalism wants to create a super state of Europe, which couldn't be further from the truth. We're not creating a United States of Europe based on like what the US in America would be. It's actually, federalism also believes in the principle of subsidiarity, which basically means that simply we want to take decisions on the level where it's the most appropriate. And there are certain topics such as peace, human rights, democracy, where maybe we need to take common decisions that everyone adheres to, of course, but it would never mean to overtake local realities. So I think at the end of the day, what matters is that you bring all of these local realities of yours into rooms like this, but also into other areas of participation. And with that, you're already doing your job as young people, for sure. We all do.
Thank you very much, Judith. I think it is indeed important that we reflect on what can be done for young people to make sure that they are able to be active participants in society. Now, the European Commission has also set up a number of supporting mechanisms, of which the Salto Center for Participation and Information is one of them. And Joanna, how does the Salto Center work towards empowering the national agencies who implement the programs in education training, but also in youth? to ensure that they allow for spaces for young people to be active in society.
Yes. You don't really see that, right? Hi, good morning. I'll also start by confessing that I'm also a yes-enner, so it feels a bit like yes-enners anonymous in this panel. But now, what I would like to ask you before I start answering is how many of you have been in any kind of Erasmus Plus experience, youth exchanges? Okay. And anyone for European Solidarity Corps, or if you're old like me, European Voluntary Service? 2, 3, okay, there's a few. So I'm asking this question just to give you some context of what is SALTO and national agencies and where we're coming from. So national agencies are in each country managing these programs that we luckily got the chance to benefit from. And SALTOs are working in between, let's say, the European Commission and the national agencies to make sure that different aspects of these programs are ensured and are done in a quality and meaningful way. I'm lucky enough to work at the SALTO that is dedicated to participation information, meaning we are somewhat the gatekeepers for the participation in democratic life priority. And it is indeed a challenge. How do we work with the national agencies to ensure they understand what we mean when we say meaningful participation? I was very glad you used that word because participation, it can be everything and anything. So it means some people might decide to interpret it as the number of participants. If there's a lot of people going on Erasmus, participation is ensured. But I think in this room, we understand that participation goes way beyond being present and taking part, but it's really how are you affecting the environment around you? Are you influencing decisions? Is your voice being heard just for the picture, or does something happen after you are invited to a public consultation? So this is our key message as SALTO-P for anyone we talk to, either it's the European Commission or the national agencies, is if you are involving particularly young people, make it meaningful. Don't invite them for a nice snack and a picture at the end if you don't plan to do anything with the input you're asking from them. So in this realm, the national agencies have been doing, lots of them are doing great work that is not always visible to us as young people, because it does happen that they are understaffed, that they are working on several things at once, that one person has several jobs. So coming from this side now, I would also say we need to sometimes be a bit more patient and look a bit more in detail at what is my national agency doing? What are these people that work for the program actually doing, and how can I reach them as well? So what we do for you, you can find in SALTO's website. We have materials both for national agencies and for people involved in the program. In the national agencies, we focus on training and materials around this topic of meaningful participation in different areas. We have only been working in education and training for 1 year now. We used to be fully dedicated to the youth field, which means we are starting a groundwork with the agencies working with school education, higher education, adult education, and VET, of even making them aware that this priority is there. That's a first step. That what does it mean, participation in democratic life? What does it mean in Erasmus Plus, and how can they make it a reality? And what we see that is happening in the national agencies happens at 3 levels. Internally in the national agencies, they do have sometimes small consultative bodies, sometimes bigger ones, where young people can take part. And I know, for example, in France, ESN France is part of the consultative body of the national agency, and I heard that there's more things happening with other countries. There are cases that we've even done case studies on youth involvement in the work of national agencies, where young people are being invited to co-decide on, could be communication, but it can also be what initiatives is the NA doing for civic engagement. So there's room there. I would definitely challenge you, especially national organizations, to go knock on your NA's door and tell them I'm here. Then among national agencies, I don't know if you noticed yesterday, there was a group of not as young Erasmus generation in the event with these green badges. We were coming from national agencies and teachers and other people working in Erasmus. We were all coming from a TCA activity. National agencies also host their own events, and they host events about participation. As SALTOs, we try to support them and make sure, again, that it's not just as tokenistic ideas that are passing. But what happened, the people were there yesterday, it's thanks to cooperation of national agencies. So this does exist, that groups of national agencies come together because they say, okay, we need to do more, we need to do better. And the Peace LTA is an example of that, but in the youth field, we also have several ones. And for example, that one is focused on alumni networks, which is another way that national agencies are giving space and voice to the Erasmus generation. So many countries have alumni networks, role model networks, where you can become a part and tell your story as ambassadors. And then, of course, there's national events that really differ from your country, the size of your NA, how are they organized, the resources they have. But definitely there's a lot happening, especially this year because it's elections year. So if you want to do something with your national agency and you want to get engaged in their work and contribute to Erasmus Plus directly or on the program level, in a different level than you do in ESN, there's a lot happening. As Saltos, we are doing the support work, and on your side you can knock their door or their email box and get engaged.
Thank you very much, Joanna. My key takeaway is that as the biggest alumni organization of the Erasmus program, we should go and knock on all of those doors to make sure that you're heard when they are doing consultations. Now, we have heard a lot of different things about European level, but we're also hosted in Spain. We're very happy to be here. And we also want to understand a little bit more from the Spanish context and the Spanish example. Maria, young people between the ages of 15 to 29 make up 7 million young people in Spain. It's a very large group, bigger than some of the other countries in Europe, or 15% of the Spanish population. And which initiatives does the European Parliament in Spain support to encourage these young people to volunteer or to debate the future of Europe?
Well, thank you, Wim. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. It's a pleasure. It's a unique opportunity for me. So many young people coming from so many countries. I was yesterday attending your opening also ceremony, and I felt so much good vibes. So I hope you are not too sleepy after one night in Seville. I know it can be tough. What I would like to start by telling you is that, yes, I am the head of the European Parliament office in Spain. Yes, the European Parliament has offices in every country, in every member state. So if you come from a member state, you will have an office at least in your capital European Union. This is a way of engaging. We also have in Spain, and this is only thanks to the European Parliament office, so thanks to my team and thanks to the big effort they are doing, another program or another initiative to foster education on the EU in schools, and it's to go region by region and to convince, because in Spain sometimes the level of subsidiarity is such that, for example, education policies can be implemented differently in different regions. So we started going region by region to convince every regional government of the need of implementing an EU voluntary subject on the EU. So all the schools who want to have it can have a specific subject on EU studies to, at the age of 17, 18 or 16-year-old, they can get more acquainted to that. And we don't want to give, in this voluntary subject, a lot of, list of countries, list of treaties, and a lot to memorize, but it's rather the opposite, is just to give them the experience of how important it is to be an EU citizen and to have a sort of mini Erasmus student without still moving out after in university. There is also activities that we do. We understand that in order to connect with the young, we have to change the way we communicate and the way we try to shape the dialogue with the society. So we stopped organizing conferences in our premises. We went out. We looked for the best bars in some of the cities where we are organizing activities, and we invite people to come, young people to come to a bar, no ties, no heels, very informal, and to discuss with MEPs on issues of their concern. We call them Terrazas de Europa, Terraces of Europe, and this is one of the initiatives we do. We also have a community. We understood already in last elections, we need the young people, and for that we need to engage and create a community. And we cannot create a community just by launching an internet campaign or paying influencers to be in TikTok. We really need to engage in a dialogue, and for that we created this community, which it used to be in 2019, This Time I'm Voting. It was a website where you could subscribe, maybe some of you can still remember, and become a volunteer in order to participate in debates with us and in activities to promote the European elections. After the last elections, we decided to keep this community and to boost it and to make it grow. This community is now called Together.eu. Who from you, from all the audience here, come from a member state, EU member state, having elections on the 6th to 9th of June? So a big majority of you, because I understand there are many other countries. So all of you can subscribe, or if you are from another country and you still want, and you live in a member state, you can subscribe to Together.eu. This is a website, it's a platform. I see somebody nodding there, so and thank God, somebody knows us already. So this community is not about spamming, it's not about receiving lots of emails about, oh yes, according to the treaties, or what is important, or what is the procedure. It's about really opening a dialogue and a debate and understanding and hearing you and inviting you to different activities. So please go to Together.eu and subscribe. I promise you it's worth it. And then we want to promote this role of volunteers, because it's you who have to take the microphone in front of the next elections, and we are very aware of that. And you are much more powerful than I can be on the streets by talking to other young people on the importance of elections. And therefore, we created, for example, this is another activity we did recently in January. We launched a boot camp for volunteers, recruited through Together.eu. There was a lot of volunteers from Spain coming to this it was a 3-day camp where we tried to train them on how to become a volunteer, what can they say, elevator pitches they can use in if they want to convince other young people, or the kind of activities, and especially to hear them, to listen to their needs, to listen to what they think we should do ahead of the elections in any communication campaign. We are working with youth associations, and that's the last thing I want to comment here. It's a secret, so I cannot tell you. However, Carlos will kill me. Carlos, can you stand up? He's our community manager. He has been working for months with youth associations in Spain, ICN, Equipo Europa, Talento para Europa, who else, Carlos? The Young Federalist, all the young associations in Spain. We are working on a secret campaign, which will be revealed soon enough, but not today, on how to engage in a debate with young people and how to convince them with a young language of going and vote. So pay attention to youth associations and their internet and social media channels. You will soon, whenever you see it, you will spot it and you will recognize it comes from youth associations, and you will like it, I hope. So this is the kind of activities we do to engage with young people in the capitals.
Thank you very much, Maria. We're definitely curious to see what you have come up with. It definitely piqued our interest. And just for the audience in the room, last time when we actually participated in This Time I'm Voting campaign, we managed to be the organization that recruited the most participants to sign up, and we're trying to beat our record. So you will also see that there is in our bingo, so there is a bingo, and if you sign up for Together.eu, you will have marked one of the bingo assignments of your 35 to celebrate the 35th birthday to achieve that. So you will find more information about that as well. But many of you mentioned it already. We have the upcoming elections, and now we want to dig deeper a little bit on the way democratic participation can impact the rights of young Europeans, and to a certain extent how this can impact the Erasmus Plus program and current but also future participants, as we want to make sure that young generations to come can have the same opportunities, because we believe as ESN that the future is Erasmus. Many of us are wearing t-shirts with this because we want to carry this conversation not only in this room and in the rooms that you will be here in the next few days, but we will be recording all of your input and all of your from here during the panels, but also during the conversations, to publish a report in the fall that puts all of this together. Now, Maria, heading into the European Parliament elections, there was some news that most Spanish youth indicated that they did not always feel that current politics represent them or their issues that they cared about. And how will this impact, do you believe, the youth turnout in Spain in these upcoming elections? And what can be done to actually counter that?
Thank you. This is a very important question to answer here. So it's true, and it doesn't happen only to young people, that sometimes we don't feel represented by our politicians because they engage into debates which we don't care so much, or which focus on topics which are not exactly our needs today, now, to be solved by the politicians, by the institutions. So it is important to understand that you have to go and vote, that it is important that the young people are inside, are on board in the elections. In 2014, only 28% of young people voted in those member states where they could. In 2019, this raised to 42%. So we are there, we are getting there. We are in the process of increasing awareness of how important it is to young people to vote. However, 42% is still below the 51% of the overall turnout in last elections. So we need to increase this figure. The surveys are telling us that actually young people are interested this time, that they are saying they want to vote. There is over 60% of young people as well saying they are interested in the EU, they feel the EU is something which has an impact on their daily lives and they would like to go and vote. But one thing are surveys, and then another thing is the real actual turnout. So why is it important to go and vote in these elections if you are a young European citizen? I'll give you 5 reasons. The first one, I'm sure you heard that already, but I don't think you really fully understood the scope, the full scope of what I'm saying now. I will give you one sentence which is familiar to you. You already stopped being the future to become the present of Europe. And you know that, but I need you to think about that with me. So please close your eyes with me. We'll do one exercise, and you will say, when I count to 3, you will say, at the same time, please follow me on this. I stop being the future to become the present of Europe. 1, 2, 3. I stop being the future to become the present of Europe. Okay, we connect now. You are the present. Don't let other institutions, don't let other people, don't let other generations to tell you, you are the future. We will take decisions for you. We know what is best for you. No, you are the best trained generation. You are the best educated generation. You have gone on Erasmus. You know Europe. You know what are your interests. Don't let others set up the agenda for you, because the decisions which are set in the European Union institutions will matter a lot to you and will have a direct impact on mental health, on housing, on climate change, and on all those interests which are your interest, not necessarily the interest of other older generations. So some of you can even vote earlier this time, because the rules have changed, and countries like Austria, Belgium, Germany, and Malta will accept people after 16-year-old to go and vote. In Greece, the minimum age has been set up at the age of 17. Is this a coincidence, or is it that really the governments are realizing, that the European Union institutions are realizing that the young generations need to get involved, and you matter? You need to go and vote. You need to legitimize the institution by participating in the Democracy Festival, in the Democracy Fest, which is that. And I give you another reason. This is still my first reason. I will give you 5. But it is a civic duty to go and vote if you participate in a democracy. However, the research shows that if you don't vote in the first elections you are entitled to, you lose the habit. And if you don't acquire this habit, you are more unlikely to vote after the age of 30 if you have never voted before. So please go and vote. Second reason, because we need to avoid the generational gap. There is a gap more present than in the past. Why? Because now, thanks to the internet, and thanks of new technologies, thanks of changes in the media landscape, different conversations are happening in different platforms. And the young people use the social media and the different platforms than other generations. And your conversation is very visible to you. And thanks to the algorithm, you will think everyone else around you is thinking the same or conversing or debating about the same. But you are being invisible to other people from other generations participating in other conversations, in other platforms. This is creating a generational gap. The older people is very aware of how difficult it was to enter into the European Union, to be a member state. However, sometimes we take it for granted, and we have other debates, other topics of interest, which are being invisible. You need to help us to speak out, to go to the media, to go to the university where you are studying, to go to your work environment and speak up about what are your topics of interest so they are set in the agenda of politicians. One example is Brexit. Young people in the UK didn't think it was so important to go and vote. We all know the outcome. Although they massively wanted to remain, the young people. No? You're saying no? Who voted in the Brexit referendum? Big applause for them, because you were a minority of young people voting. But you are aware that in the polls after the turnout, one of the reasons why Brexit won was because the young people didn't go massively to vote, because you massively wanted to remain, and however, it didn't happen. Well, let's hope one day we can change that again. If you don't care, if you don't vote in these elections, other people will decide for you. This is the lesson to be learned from Brexit. Third reason, because young people have your own interest. You have your own interest. I mentioned a few of them. Mental health is a topic of discussion which is a topic of discussion when we are discussing with young people. And we don't find this topic in other generations, or not so much, or not so present. Housing, difficult access to housing, other topics of interest, climate anxiety. So all those topics need to be in the agenda because they worry you. And you need solutions now, and you are the present, remember? You're not the future, you're the present. So you need to get involved and go to vote. The risk is that although you have a lot of serious interest, there is one risk of young generations, and it's that you have been born in the European Union. And sometimes, in your conversations, we realize that you take the EU for granted, that you think it will always be there, that democracy will always be there, that the values that uphold the European Union institutions will always be there. Do not take it for granted. All generations know that they are not always there, and that we need to protect that and to fight for that. So don't fall on that risk, and be very aware, especially with the current situation, political and geopolitical situation in Europe. It's important to keep it into account. Fourth reason, I'm reaching the end here, because we need you to fight disinfo. Disinformation is very high. It's very present in the campaigns, in the political spectrum in Europe. I'm sure you have heard about that. We have a lot of interferences from Russia, from China during COVID, from different countries wanting democracies to be weakened. So you are the techies. You are the ones using the internet to get information. You are the ones disseminating this information. Please help us to fight disinfo. This is another reason why we need you to be engaged in the conversation ahead of elections. And the fifth reason, it's the most obvious reason. I don't need to go very much into that, but because you know how much it's at the stake in these elections. Because you know that we have a very unstable political context, that we had the two biggest crises since World War II in the last legislative term, in the one which is finishing now, which is COVID and a new war in the continent, the war in Ukraine. And we need to really go up to date and have good politicians in the EU institutions to address the challenges that we will have in the next elections. And these challenges will be global hostility and the new geopolitics of power. What is the role that Europe can play in it? It will be to continue with the EU enlargement, because we need to give Eastern young Europeans the hope that they will belong to the EU, because they are calling to our door and they really need this chance. For that, we will need, of course, reforms, internal reforms in the EU, so another reason, another challenge to address, and the green transition, the digital transition, the strategic autonomy. All these reasons all these challenges, sorry, are on the table and will be decided in the political balance which will come out of the next elections. So again, raise your hand. Who comes from a member state and is entitled to vote between the 6th and the 9th of June? Okay, big majority of this room. Who is going to vote on the 6th to the 9th of June? Good, good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. And Raresh, as a board member of the European Youth Forum, you work daily to protect actually the right of all of these young Europeans who represent 25% of all Europeans at large. And what do you believe are the biggest challenges that young Europeans will face between 2025 and 2030? And how can the European elections impact them?
There we go. So we're running short on time, so we do not have time to do what I would have liked to do, which is an energizer, because I see that, it's been an hour and a half, so it's kind of, we have only half an hour left, but it's very important what's going to be spoken in this half an hour. So we don't have time to do a full-on energizer, but I would like you, it's still morning, so just give me a bit of a stretch, I don't know, just move for a little bit, shake our arms a tiny bit, come on, move with me, yeah, just a bit. Amazing, thank you so much. So,
you made them noisy, now you get them quiet again.
So, in terms of what we do at the European Youth Forum is, well, you spoke about the biggest issue that is going to affect us in the next 5 years. The first one that comes to mind is definitely the climate emergency. If this event would have been organized, we're in the south of Spain, if this event would have been organized 1 or 2 months from now, so in May or in June, we would have barely been able to breathe the air outside, provided that we would have been able to get here if there were no wildfires going on in any regions in Spain. So the climate emergency is not only an issue for the next 5 years, but if the European Parliament, national parliaments, because there are many rounds of elections at the national level as well this year, do not appropriately address this issue, this will be an issue for the rest of our lives. It's tough to comprehend, I know, the average age in this room is probably around 25 years old, but we will have to deal with this for the rest of our lives if action isn't taken now. So we just cannot afford to stand by and watch as this happens. At the European Youth Forum, we're supporting the Good Lobbies Coalition on Future Generations, which is designed to provide a focus on those generations that are not yet born. So to have a very proactive approach towards protecting the environment and saving our future. And there's a concept introduced in this coalition that we all need to act as good ancestors. Again, the average age in this room is around 25 years old. I know it's tough to think of ourselves as ancestors for anything or anyone, but it's not only up to the policymakers to enact those rules, it's also up to us to hold them accountable and to push this issue that matters for us, for our children, onto their agendas. And we've always faced specific challenges as young people, whether it comes to getting our first jobs, being taken seriously as a young person, as an adolescent, or being actually involved in a meaningful way in decision-making processes. So we have a very different set of issues than the broader, maybe middle-aged or older population. So, for example, how many of you right now think that in the next 10 years you will be able to own a home, for example? So to buy your own home.
Which country are they coming from?
So I got a question whispered in my ear about which countries you're coming from, but I think the fact that in a room of a few hundred people, only 5 people put their hands up, it doesn't matter which country you're coming from. This is a systemic issue, and I had another question about banning unpaid internships and how many of you have done an unpaid internship, but I don't want us to fall down a very depressive landslide, so I'm not going to ask that question as well. But those issues need to be addressed, and we are addressing them with our member organizations at European Youth Forum. We're advocating for lowering the voting age in more EU member states. It's happening in Malta, in Austria, in some provinces in Germany as well, in Belgium. So we are seeing progress in this, but spaces are being created for more young people, for more children, for more adolescents to get involved. At some point, it's also our responsibility to take those spaces that we fought and organizations have fought for so long. So, simply put, we just need to do the tiniest bit of research about the candidates in the European elections. Google it. Go on websites by organizations in our home countries. There is a lot of work being done around the elections to provide you with a deeper understanding of who these people are and elect people who care about us. You'd be surprised at how few politicians actually truly give a damn about young people. So look into it, do your research, and elect people who care about us and your issues. Otherwise, the amount of people who are able to buy a home, who do unpaid internships, and who just matter to society in 10, 15, 20 years will still be 4 or 5 in a room of 500.
Thank you, Raj, for those insights. And indeed, we're looking at the also pollings that are coming in and the predictions for the European Parliament elections. And Judith, the predictions say that we might have the most far-right parliament since its formation, so since ever. And how could this impact the unity in the European continent? How could this affect youth rights, access to programs such as Erasmus+?
Thanks, Wim. I mean, of course, I'm not a fortune teller. I think that's important to say. We're all seeing the pollings, but yeah, let's see how the final numbers end up. But it's safe to say that in terms of far-right parties in the European Parliament, it's going to be the biggest ever existing. Of course, what is our category of far-right? I was thinking a lot about that before this panel, because I think that's also being questioned and defined by some parties who fall into that category themselves, but also more from center-right parties and so on. So I think there's a lot of question mark on how we see that. In terms of just right-wing conservative politics, I mean, ever since 1999, the European People's Party, that defines themselves as center-right, has been winning the European Parliament elections. So we lived 2 decades with that in the Parliament already. I think everyone makes their own conclusions how that goes, so it's also not my role, especially as SG of Jeff, to say that. But you know, somehow it also kind of worked out in the sense of like there are agreements always between European political families to split, at least on the European level, some of the roles. So I don't know, EPP has been in the lead of the European Parliament, but then the High Representative is always a socialist. The Vice President roles are also split by different political families. So there is some sort of consensus seeking often on the European level. And I am also just sharing this as an example to say that that's also what Europe is built on, to make sure that there is this consensus seeking between different political families in Europe that are present. But because of this, I also wanted to perhaps rethink when we talk about far right, right? Because we've been using this term a lot, I think, in these past years. We also use populism as a term a lot. They are sometimes matched up together, sometimes separated. And what I also always thought is that something misleading can be, if we start thinking about this only as the far right, that a type of hate-based and discriminatory politics that we're living nowadays is only confined to certain political parties. And I think that's also not necessarily the case. We really have to be aware that even in bigger parties that have relatively progressive agendas or center agendas on certain topics, perhaps there are viewpoints that are not as supportive of all human rights and democracy and rule of law. So in that sense, we all need to be on the awareness spectrum, so to say. And I think a room full of people like you, who are living the values of democratic participation, human rights, and a multicultural society on the daily, who is better placed than to also safeguard some of these things that you who are also living them on the daily. So I also would encourage to say that sometimes even if in institutions the situation turns out to be bleak, there's always still structures like ESN and other civil society who are making sure that, that certain principles are safeguarded. And I would also say that if we would end up with a European Parliament that would turn narratives in well, a hate-based way, then it's also important that we do even more, right? And we make sure that we take part in all of the different advocacy moments and consultation processes where civil society is shaping also the programs, that, such as Erasmus Plus or also other ones. But I also want to say is that based on in the hate-based politics that we are experiencing nowadays, actually my organization, Jeff, we built our whole campaign to motivate people to go out to vote in the European elections to counteract this. Because, well, there was a Eurobarometer polling in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, where people were asked, how do you feel about Europe as a European citizen? And the emotions expressed, all of the top 10 was negative. It was about doubt, it was about fear, it was sometimes confusion, a long list of emotions, except hope, which ended up in the top 5. So for us, we framed the campaign around that, called Your Hope. But I also bring it in here because I think these are important moments when you look around you and there's so much negative narratives that are impacting people's lives in severe ways that you turn it on its head and you try to find a narrative around, from your perspective, who lived it as a positive experience, to have a multicultural society, to have everyone around the table, and start promoting that as the right version of Europe, so to say. And I think it's even more important in times like this because it's not only in Europe, but it's also threatening the very fundamentals of what Europe was built on, which is peace. And I think this is also my last intervention on that, because we lived a period of negative peace, so to say. If you're familiar with these terms, there's negative peace and positive peace. Negative peace meant that there is a lack of direct violence, so let's say the absence of war, but that there's also a concept of positive peace, where also all structural discrimination is removed and indirect violence is removed. And we never achieved that so far in Europe. So even in these periods when there would be the far-right parliaments and some narrative would go, I would urge you to try to find narratives that promote this positive peace instead.
Thank you very much. Positive peace as a key takeaway. Joanna, there have been critical voices, including from ESN and some national agencies, that indicate that the fourth pillar of the Erasmus Plus program on democratic participation did not receive perhaps as much attention in the past few years when it comes to policy making. How can the Erasmus Plus program be used to promote democratic participation in spite perhaps of the lack of strong policy backup?
Thank you. I'll try to be brief, as I've been told we need to wrap up. But the first thing I wanted to do is to acknowledge the policy is missing. We did an exercise at Saltopi. We hired researchers to map policies where is democratic participation talked about in EU policies, and particularly in the ones referred to in the Erasmus Plus guide. And we had a researcher going through all of them, and she barely found mentions of participation, youth participation, democratic participation. So there is a gap. And there is a need for advocacy. So every time you're thinking like, oh, yes, and International is another campaign to advocacy for something, oh, the European Youth Forum, Jeff, they're still talking about these things. We need to keep talking about these things. Join them. hop on the train because there is a lack of policy and it's not going to change unless we who are affected by it and who care about it say it very loud so they can't ignore it. So, of course, policy is important. We need the policy backup in order to be able to then do the programs. There would be no Erasmus if there was no policy backing it up. But what I wanted to focus is really on the practice. Don't underestimate the importance of making policy into reality. We don't need a document to tell us that participation is important. We have this room. So even if there's no policy documents or not enough policy documents, it's still up to us and it's up to organizations to pick up what's there and the tools that are out there to make democratic participation more tangible and real and meaningful, to go back. And Erasmus Plus is a brilliant tool for that. And it's not just at the level of the big organizations. Of course, there's K1, K2, and K3 projects, these big cooperation projects that last for years, advocacy, policy experimentation, etc. But there's also all other sorts of funding available that you can apply for even as local sections or just as with your friends. If you want to do something and you need a little bit of funding, there are lines available for that. For example, K154, youth participation activities, is meant for informal groups of young people who want to do things by young people for young people. There's local European solidarity projects where you can get funding for projects in your own community. So if you have an idea, don't wait for the paper to come to say it's very important that you get European citizens get engaged. Just find the people that speak the same language as you, that want to make things happen, or maybe people that think differently, but that they share the same will to make something happen. In Salto, the short promotional moment, we have participation.pool.eu with over 700 resources for participation. We have a very practical toolkit where you can find these easy actions of Erasmus+. If you want to get started into it, we have a toolkit that explains it step by step and also how to design the projects in a participatory way, because we cannot really talk about participatory democracy if then our projects are done in a very self and organization-focused way. So there's the tools out there, there's the funding out there, national agencies are there, and one piece of news I forgot to say in the first answer is that with the European Commission, we're working for the priority of democratic participation to stop being the fourth pillar and be a bit more in an equal level with the others. So now we're going to have contact points at the national agencies focus on democratic participation. So yeah, go out there. Not to put all the responsibility on you. There's a lot of responsibility on the institution side, and we need to, like Rade was saying, we need to keep holding them accountable. But definitely there's space for your Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps have room for your ideas. Get it done.
Thank you very much, Joanna, and thank you very much, Judith, Maria, and Raresh, for all of your insights. I think we see that if we want to protect the future of Erasmus, that we need to stay active and vigilant, and that we need to knock on doors of different institutions, but also expect that they listen to us, as it is the right of young people to be listened to. Thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Wim, for this wonderful moderation. Thank you for the panel. Thank you all, guys. Maria, Raresh, Judith, Joanna, Wim, thank you. Thank you all so much. We heard about from different organizations what they do in order to engage young people. Now, since we are behind the program, we will run a little bit to catch up, but we will stay on the same topic. And for that, I would like to invite our Mr. Yao Meduk, who is the spokesperson from the European Parliament. If you could join us and also share with us a few thoughts from your side. Thank you very much. One? Okay.
Yes, I think it's working. Well, first of all, sorry because it's me again. I think you listened to me. I think so, because yesterday it was impossible to see you. There was a huge light in front of me, so I was really speaking to the dark. This time I can see people and maybe the reactions. I'm not going to repeat what I said yesterday. I think that yesterday I tried to come with, let's say, quite a political message, because of course there are many things that are at stake in the next years. Maria, which by the way was fantastic in her statement, mentioned those topics that are a real priority for you, for young people, but there are also these, let's say, bigger topics that will affect you in a way or in another, not just because you are young, just because you are citizens of the European Union, or because you live in Europe and you would like to become citizens of the European Union as soon as possible. And second, I'm not here to convince you about the importance of voting, because I saw the result of this kind of survey, and I would say that 99% of people here with the possibility of voting knows about the importance of this. But let me maybe share a couple of messages with you, and then, of course, again, a request, in this case, on how to cooperate, how to work together during these next 63, 65 days ahead of European elections, depending how you count, and taking into account that the Dutch people, they will be the first to start voting the 6th. The Italians will be the last, because the polling stations in Italy will be open until 11 p.m. on Sunday, the 9th of June. Second message, thank you. Thank you to ESN, not just for inviting us, the European Parliament's office in Spain, and me from Brussels and so on, but thank you first of all for the work, the very good work that you have been doing already. Last time, 2019, there were a couple of references, and it's true. You helped a lot with the This Time I'm Voting campaign 5 years ago, and I see that now you are also preparing a lot of activities that can help us in convincing those people, young people or not, that let's say are a little bit far, not just from Europe or from the European reality, but sometimes even from politics. And this is also something that it's important to try to fix. What's at stake? Again, I'm not going to repeat what I said yesterday, but maybe you know, of course, because many media reported on this at the beginning of this year, that this is the year of the elections in the world. More or less half of the inhabitants of this world will have the possibility to vote in elections in around 70 countries. Of course, we know that not all these elections are real elections, and that there are also, let's call them fake elections, or elections where there is no choice, or the choices are not the real ones. We've seen what happened, we experienced what happened, for example, a couple of weekends ago in Russia. I think that everybody was perfectly aware about who would be the winner of the elections. And by the way, also about what happens when you try to oppose to this and to defend real democracy. But there are two elections that, in my opinion, are going to be important for us, because they will, in some way, combine both of them, the results of them. They are going to shape, in some way, what will be the next 5 or 10 years for all of us and for the other 440 million citizens in Europe. And these are the American elections and the European elections. Yes, of course, the American elections will have an impact and will have an effect. We don't know who will win. We don't know what this will mean in terms of cooperation with Europe, what will mean in terms of keeping close to Ukraine and to help Ukraine to defend from Russia. We don't know the consequences for NATO. We don't know the consequences for our own security, for our own defense. We don't know what it will mean also in terms of trade, in terms of cooperation, in many, many, many things. But I don't know how many of you have the possibility to vote for the American elections. I cannot. I can vote for the European elections. And yes, it's this kind of combined result that it's going to let us understand what could be our next common future, easier or more difficult future. Second thing, the priorities in front of us are enormous. If you compare this legislature, which was quite bumpy, but also quite positive, with the next one, I don't know which one of the both is going to be really more difficult. This was the legislature of Brexit. This was the legislature of COVID. This was the legislature, it is, of the war in Russia, of the war in Gaza. But what's next? It's about, this famous strategic autonomy. It's a very strange word, but it's very important. It means how are we going to get our own space in the next world, or in the current world already, which is becoming more and more complicated. Everybody told us that the 21st century would be even better than the 20th. Oof, I don't know. If you compare the last 20 years of the 20th century with these first 24 years, I'm not completely sure about this, which means that, yes, we will be obliged to do all these things together. Second, it's about enlargement. Many of you come from countries that are fully European but are not yet members of the European Union. And this is something to be fixed for many reasons. First of all, because this is your right. But second, also because from a geopolitical point of view, this is something which is going to become more and more important. And we see already what happens in some of these countries, how sections of the society in some way pushed by some political forces are starting to say, if the European Union doesn't like me, I don't like the European Union either, which is kind of human reaction to this, but we have to avoid entering into this situation. So we need to start preparing this enlargement from the first day after the European elections. And then we will see about the calendar, and we will see about the conditions, and we will see whether these countries will all come together or will come one per one. These are things that will be discussed and in some way also decided, both by the Council, by the European Parliament. So yes, in this case also, the result of the European elections could come with a result. It's also about reforming the European Union internally. We know that if we want this enlargement, we need to reform the way we are working. We obviously are seeing almost every day the difficulties at the level of the Council and the Member States to take decisions when unanimity is required. And we see that in this world, which is becoming faster and faster, we cannot spend 6 months in convincing 27 Member States, 27 governments to do the same thing, because it will be too late and it will be too short. So yes, we need to change these things in the next years, and again, the European Parliament will play a role there. And when I say that the elections will come with an effect, it's not just about electing the members of the Parliament. It is not just about who will be the president of the Commission and which kind of working program, legislative program will be negotiated between both the Parliament and the Commission. It's also about which kind of mood will be in this continent the day after the European elections. And this mood from a, let's say, sociological point of view or psychological point of view probably will be even more important than who exactly will be elected or not a member of the European Parliament. Turnout, yes, participation is very important. It is not the same having 40% of Europeans voting than having 51 or 60%. Maria reminded you some data about youth participation in 2019, and there was a huge increase. She also reminded you that there is still a gap between the percentage of young people voting and the general percentage of people voting. And now the question is how young people can help us to increase, again, participation at the general level. And there, let's be optimistic, because the Eurobarometers are telling us that right now there is more people interested in voting than it was the case 5 years ago. We are going to publish what we call the Spring Eurobarometer next week. So this is a kind of pre-announcement. 70% of the Europeans, if you ask them, would you like or would you be interested in voting in the European elections if these elections would take place next week? 70% of citizens say, yes, I would vote. Of course, we know that not all of them are going to vote for many reasons, and sometimes just because people forget or because people don't remember when exactly the elections will take place. For you, for me, it's evident, but for many millions of citizens, this is not evident now, and maybe it's not evident the day before. Sometimes it's also because you need a kind of extra last push the day before or the same day. Sometimes it's because it's sunny. Sometimes it's because it rains. Sometimes it's because the night before was an interesting one. Or sometimes it's before there are kids at home. There are so many reasons that make that people who tell you, yes, I will vote, then at the end of the day, they don't. And this is where I think that we all together can, let's say, try to correct or to reduce this gap. But let's compare this figure with the figure 5 years ago. 5 years ago, same question, same moment, same answer. 58% of people told us, yes, I will vote. And then 51% voted, and the other 7%, I don't know, they went to the beach or they stay in their beds. Now it's 70%, so it's more than 10 points more than 5 years ago. Now the question, again, is how we collectively can help to ensure that most of these extra 10 points will be people who will really take the, let's say, the small effort to go and to vote. What about the results? We don't know. Of course, there are projections and there are surveys, and of course we see that still today, when you look to these surveys, there is a pro-European majority in the European Parliament, or let's say an European constructive majority in the European Parliament, with the EPP and the SD and the Liberals and the Greens, and maybe some others. We'll see, because we don't know how many of these political groups will stay there and in which conditions. But at the end of the day, it will depend on who will vote and who will stay at home. And I can tell you that in some, let's say, extremes, and I'm not becoming now ideological, it's just about, let's say, the European aspect of this, people will mobilize. And so now the question is whether others will mobilize or not. And in some way, again, this is also in your hands. So what can you do? What can we do? You know that the communication services of the European Parliament, we are again running a kind of communication campaign, which in this case, it's a campaign which is based on 2 Ds, delivery and democracy. Delivery, because of course, citizens need to know that what happens in the European Parliament has an impact in their lives, positive or negative impact. It's not to me to tell to them, it's to them to decide. And depending on this, they will vote one thing or they will vote another. But what is important is this concept of impact. And there, the good news from the Eurobarometer, again, is that around same figure, 70% of the Europeans tell us, and it was not the case 5 years ago, yes, I know that what is decided in Brussels by the European Parliament, by the Council, by the Commission, has an impact in my life. So now let's connect the fact that I know that what happens there, it's affecting me, to the fact that I have to take my own decisions on who will be there taking those decisions that will affect me. And second is about democracy. And this was my message yesterday. Yeah, democracy is not a given. Democracy is not there forever. Democracy was not here in Spain 50 years ago. And in your countries, I don't know, 10 years ago, 100 years ago. And who says that democracy will be there in 10, 15, or 20 years? And we see, and this is what I tried to say yesterday, that what's happening in Ukraine, it's not only about a territory, it's not only about land, it's also about the concept of democracy, and it's also about the concept of the respect of human rights and the respect of values, etc. So yes, it's about delivery, but it's also about democracy. We are doing many things. We are, let's say, learning from the experience of 2019. You will see many things happening in the next days. As I said, next week we are going to publish this new Eurobarometer. I'm sure that many of the figures, let's say, to enhance the visibility of these European elections. So yes, we need your help. We need you to help us to become more visible during these next 11, 12 weeks. Please encourage your friends, your family, co-workers, students, people belonging to the same associations you are working with, of course those that are represented here, but also those that you are active in your lives when back home. Please help us making your own posts on social media about elections. We start to be quite visible. We even took the decision, which was politically risky, to open our own platform on TikTok. We know about the political difficulties linked to TikTok, but we also know that 140 million citizens in Europe live in planet TikTok and take information and disinformation, and a lot of disinformation from TikTok. So I don't know how many of you are also part of this platform, but if you have a possibility, not just to counter disinformation, but to publish and to disseminate real information about the European elections, please do it in your language, in your way, with your priorities, with your focus, with your ideas, with your ideological decisions or choices, but please do it as well. And then help us with the remind me to vote part of our campaign. Because as I said before, the real question on turnout is the difference between people who will tell you that they will vote and people who vote. If you go to the website of the European Parliament or if you visit together.eu, I'm sure many of you are members of together.eu, there is this remind me to vote feature, which in reality is just the place where, taking it, you will allow the European Parliament to send you a couple of reminders once the European elections will be closer. Hey, you asked me to remind you that the elections arrive. Yes, the elections are today, or the elections will be in 2 days, or will be in 1 day. It looks very simple, it looks even very simplistic, but this is the kind of feature that can be very useful. And it's also the kind of feature that you can help spread in a way or in another, because it's not ideological, it's not about politics, it's just about reminding people that the elections are there. And then you will see the 29th of April, we are going to launch a series of videos that I'm sure will mean something to you, because they are going to be not just very impactful, but also very emotional. And I hope that we are not going to be under a lot of criticism from media because the European Parliament communication services became emotional. Politics are also about emotions and not just about rations and about reasons. And you will see that this is the kind, these videos will come with the kind of message that are really focusing on you, on those who in the next years will be there to take the torch from the previous generations, from the oldest generations, for those generations that really had to battle. And when I say battle, I'm also speaking in real terms, battle for democracy and for freedom. These generations, for obvious reasons, are starting to disappear. But some of them will address you through these videos to tell you, now this is not my turn anymore. This is maybe the last time that I have the possibility to vote. Now it's your turn. Now it's your voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jaume. Thank you so much for bearing with us for a second time. It is wonderful to see from the participants that we have, the speakers, all these insights about the European elections. We are almost in the end. We have one final speaker, and the final speaker, this one is different from the others because we heard from institutions, we heard from youth organizations, but now we will actually hear from a journalist. So I would like to invite on the stage Nur Ben Yessef, who will speak about the influence of social networks on our decisions. Nur, the floor is yours. Sorry for a second, we have a technical problem with the clicker, doesn't work, and we have a wonderful presentation to show, and it's important to fix this.
this thing?
Okay, there it is. So bear with us for the last 10 minutes. We have the last presentation about the influence on social networks. And the floor is yours now.
Hi, everyone. For me, it's a huge pleasure to be here. Today, I'm here with you to talk about the influence of the social networks in our decision making. Be careful with the fake news. For me, as a journalist, it's so important. So, my name is Nur Ben Yesef. I'm a journalist in Antena 3 News. I'm working in the morning shows, reporting from 6:15 to 9 a.m., so early. And for me, it's a huge pleasure to be here with you. I want to be natural. This is why I'm moving like that on stage. And also be honest with you. So before starting, I want to apologize for any mistake I could make during my speech. As you know, English is not my first language, so I haven't been practicing lately. So be kind with me, please. So overcome this issue. Let's start this journey. As you know, in digital era, social networks has become a virtual public space where we interact, debate, and of course, share information. Sorry. However, this space of free expressions also become a breeding ground for misinformation, especially during electoral periods. In Spain, we have very soon the elections of País Vasco, the 21 of April. Also in May, we have the Catalan elections. And in June, all of us here, we have the European election that, as you know, they are very important. And I would like that what you learn here today, put into practice in this election. Why? Because during the election period, they're gonna bombard us with information, a lot of information. So we have to be distrustful. I told you that as a journalist. So, as you can read here, social networks have a strong impact on the decision making. This is a reality. So, digital platforms have a great power to influence our decision. The information we consume, the opinions we read, the image we see can shape our views on many topics, including, of course, politics. So, we have to be careful about hoaxes and fake news. These two are a threat to our democracy. Let's put an example. Do you remember that? This picture, it's a real picture, both of them. The one above is taken from one perspective, and the other one from another perspective. It's not manipulated, it's true. So, this is a photograph of the Duke of Cambridge leaving the hospital after the birth of his